Okay, I think we're going to kick off. Hi, everyone. My name is Sana Khan, and I'm a program manager in the search engineering team at Microsoft. Today, I'm going to be presenting with Mikhail Svensson. He's an architect, he's an MVP, and for the past 10 years, he's been working with customers in deploying custom SharePoint solutions and working on different aspects of SharePoint. And together, we're going to be talking to you about people search and its extensibility options in SharePoint 2013. Changing?
You should come over here.
Yeah. OK. To set some context, we've all been in that situation where we had to find someone to talk to, like a legal person or an HR person or someone who's going to approve our expenses. And for this, we always walk to our manager who tells us to go and talk to a person X, and we go to person X, and they tell us to go and talk to person Y. And essentially, it takes about 45 minutes to have a 5-minute conversation at the end to get your work done. So we're all about changing that time from 45 minutes to 5 minutes, or even 5 seconds, depending on your scenario. And so this brings us to what we believe in as part of people search. We believe that the real value of any organization are its people. They are the knowledge sources, they are the powerhouses, they are the pivots that connect the workflows and the processes and the threads. They are the people who are the drivers. And to make your users, to make information workers more productive, we need to add visibility and transparency around the people. We need to make it super easy for users to find them, connect and communicate with them, and to tap into these powerhouses. And so this is why we've created specialized, rich experiences in SharePoint 2013 around people. You've heard in the keynote, you've heard in the multiple sessions and seen that we have multiple sessions around people and social. Essentially, it boils down to people being treated as first-class objects in SharePoint 2013. And the idea is to enable your users to leverage the most important asset in your organization for decision-making. Does that make sense? Everybody on the same page? Yeah, good. OK, so that brings us to why people search is important, or why you should be in this session. And in an attempt to answer that, I'm going to ask you a few questions. Raise your hands if your users have found it difficult to find people in your organization. OK, that's good. I see multiple hands up there. Raise your hands if your users have tried to find people by name or by location, by job title, or by their subject matter expertise. OK, I see a bunch of hands getting raised. OK, so now it's a tricky one. Raise your hands if your users have used people search in SharePoint 2010. I am very happy with this audience. I love this. Awesome. And so lastly, raise your hands if you've tried personalizing your enterprise search results similar to what we have in terms of personalization features in Bing or Google. OK, so I'm super glad that this audience is here because I saw a number of hands being raised. And this is great because you're in the absolute right session. Because these are the questions that I asked. We're going to be talking about two main things today. One, we're going to talk about the out-of-box feature set that we have as part of people search in SharePoint 2013. And we're going to be demoing these super awesome features to you this afternoon. And second, we're going to be showing you some of the extension points of people search. Specifically, we're going to be talking about using business connectivity services for customizing expertise search. And then we're going to be using user context for personalizing enterprise search. And so to elaborate on the last one a bit more, User context is defined as contextual information of any user. For example, their job title, their department, their location. For example, I'm a program manager. I work in the search team, and I work in Redmond. So when I issue a search query, bubbling the documents that are from other program managers, are from people in my team, people in my Uber org, bubbling them to the top as opposed to the other documents. This is personalization, and this we are doing through user context in SharePoint 2013. I'm going to be talking to you guys about the first bit over here, the out-of-box feature set, and then I'm going to hand it over to Mikhail, who's going to show you how super easy it is to do your customizations. Cool? Yes. OK. So I'm going to move over to my demo machine, and I'm going to tell you a story about Garth Fort. He's a marketing manager. His day is filled between attending meetings, getting his own work done, and making sure that the people working on his projects are unblocked. That's the most important thing. When he learns that he needs to talk to a patent lawyer, Dennis Dehaney, for some patent infringement concern, he immediately jumps into Outlook. Garth is an information worker, and as most of you know over here, we live and breathe in Outlook. And Garth is in the cloud. He is using Outlook 2013, and he knows that as part of it, there's a separate tab for him to search for people who are either his local contacts or the people in his company, his enterprise directory. And so he comes here, and he issues a search for Dennis Dehaney. And he doesn't find anything. So he goes in and searches for legal department because he's looking for a patent lawyer. And again, he doesn't find anything. At this point in time, Garth is not sure if he misheard the name, if he's trying to find the right person. So he decides to move over to enterprise search and tries to see if SharePoint is more flexible to his searches. So he moves over to sites. I've opened the tab separately so that I don't have to wait for the network to pick it up. And he again searches for Dennis Dehaney. And it should show up. Nail biting. Ta-da! OK, bam. So without going into a separate vertical, without going into a separate app, Garth is able to see his person result right there, front and center in the enterprise search results. He's also able to see that there's someone in this planet who is named Dennis with a single N. Clearly, he was misspelling his name. And so Garth is able to see, based off of the information in the contact card, that this guy is a paralegal. He works in the legal department. And based off of this, he thinks that he has the right person. But then he can hover over Dennis's contact card and see additional information, see the past projects that he's worked on, see his interests and skills. He can also see the documents that he's authored, and they contain a bunch of information around litigation and around law. And based off of all of this contextual information around Dennis, he's able to make the decision that this is the Dennis Dehaney that he wants to go and talk to, and this is the right guy. And so he immediately goes to his image, and the person card pops up, or the action pane pops up. And he's able to either start an IM conversation, or a phone conversation, video, email, whatever he wants. And so he decides to go ahead and start a phone conversation with Dennis. He calls him up. Dennis is about to board a plane, and tells Garth to go and talk to someone in the Project Falcon team in London because they had a similar issue and they should be able to help him. So since Garth is already in the people search experience, or the enterprise search experience, he decides to change his query to Project Falcon London. And bam, again, search is smart to identify that the user is typing in a location and is able to pivot the results around that location and provide the relevant results around the other tokens in the query. In this case, Project Falcon. And it gives back relevant people. So this is people located in London, the first block that you see. And Garth is able to see that there's a paralegal here, there's a product manager over here. And so he decides to go in and see the full set of results and does a deep dive into the people search experience that we have as part of SharePoint 2013. And so he has refiners over here based off of department, job title. He narrows down to legal. He sees that there's only one person as part of this demo. And he's able to see that this person works on Project Falcon. And so again, he uses the action pane, gives Katie a call, and Katie tells him that his project is very similar to what Project Falcon is all about. And if it meets a certain criteria, X, Y, or Z, he should be golden. He doesn't have anything to worry about. So now Garth has another dilemma. He needs to go and learn about Project Falcon. He needs to go and read documents about design and trying to figure out what it's all about. Instead of that, all he wants to do is to find a person who can tell him exactly what Project Falcon designs were all about, and save him all of the effort that he's going to be doing. So he goes in and changes his query to Project Falcon designs. And he sees a combination of results. For those of you who are familiar with SharePoint 2010, you will see that the first set of results over here are from profile matches. Essentially, people who've gone into their My Sites and added Project Falcon as a keyword anywhere, they're the results coming back. However, the second set of results, which Garth found more interesting, is people who've written about Project Falcon. So he hovers over Sarah Davis, and he finds that Sarah has authored a number of documents around Project Falcon designs. She doesn't have Falcon anywhere in her profile, but clearly in SharePoint, she has a bunch of collateral that is associated with designs and Project Falcon. And based off all of this, he's kind of confident that Sarah Davis is the person that he wants to go and talk to. Additionally, he also sees that he and Sarah have a bunch of people in common. They have Bonnie, Janet, and Molly in common, and so he can use them as connection points when he reaches out to Sarah. So he gives Sarah a call. Sarah tells him about Project Falcon designs, and she's able to tell him that he has nothing to worry about. He can move ahead with his work because there are no patent concerns here. And so Garth is super happy because he got his work done, he got his answer, and he was able to move on. He told his team to go ahead with what they were doing, and he moves on to the next task in the day. Again, it was super easy for him to find all of these people and get his entire task done, instead of spending a lot of time going around, running around people's offices. So that's the end of Garth's story. But since we're in this experience, I'm going to take a few moments to show you some of the other cool things that we've done in SharePoint 2013. So for finding names, we've introduced the name type ahead or the word wheeling experience around people. So you type somebody's initial characters, and all of the people whose first name or last name matches that, it shows up. It's the type ahead experience that you're already super familiar with. We've also, for difficult names, we've also introduced fuzzy name suggestions right directly into name suggestions. So in this case, if you mistype or misspell Pashka, you're able to see the people who have similar names or names very close to what you've typed. So this is pretty cool in terms of the name finding experiences, because that's one of the main traffic that we get to people. We also have out-of-the-box phone number search this time around. So you have, I'm going to type in a number that I don't remember off the top of my head. And again, so based off of the numbers, the work phone, the mobile phone that you have in your profile, we're able to do smart matching on these numbers. We're able, whatever format that you enter them in, we're able to parse them, identify that it's a phone number query, and return the people who have that phone number in their profiles. So that's the end of the first demo. And I'm going to take a moment to summarize what you guys just saw. So first, for the first time in SharePoint history, we have removed the silos around people search. We have taken people search out, and we've placed it front and center into the expertise enterprise experience. So you don't have to go to a separate app. You don't have to go to a separate vertical. It's right there. And it's in multiple experiences. It can be in site search. It can be in enterprise search, whatever you're looking for. So that's super cool. Second, for the first time again, you have true expertise search. So we heard the pain points that people find it difficult to maintain their profiles, to fill their profiles. So we decided that we shouldn't have users rely on that for expertise, and instead we have so much collateral already available in SharePoint to be able to identify who your subject matter experts are. Essentially use all of that collateral to figure out the right people for expertise or keyword queries. Again, out of the box in SharePoint 2013. Then we created rich experiences around certain properties. We understand that when people are searching for other people, there are certain metadata properties that they use pretty commonly. They use location, they use phone number, a few others. And so we created rich experiences, out-of-box experiences around these properties. So if you have location, if you have phone numbers in your profiles, regardless of whether they're synced from Active Directory into the user profile store, or you have some kind of custom pipeline that takes location or phone number properties from somewhere else, third-party systems, we will do matching on them. And we will provide your users with smart matching experiences on these properties. And then lastly, looking at query logs, we were able to identify that about 80% of the queries that are hitting people search are name queries. And so we had a pretty neat solution in SharePoint 2010 around phonetic matching and fuzzy matching. We went a step further on that. We've made fuzzy matching better. It is going to be more robust and resilient to your misspellings, mistypings, your phonetic and fuzzy matches. It's going to be, it's going to work across languages in many cases. We'll share out the documentation around the languages, the cross-language support that we provide. And then we introduced name suggestions so that you don't even have to make a mistake. We can find the name in the suggestions list that we provide you with. So these are some of the out-of-box features that we have, and they're all new to SharePoint 2013. And this is a summary. Do you guys think it's cool? Cool. No clapping? Sorry. Thank you. OK. So having just heard that, having just seen that, you guys might be wondering how extensibility comes into the picture. And so we think that we've done a really good job around using the structured data that we have in the user profile store and using the unstructured data that we have in SharePoint to create these out-of-box experiences around people finding based off of different properties. But we also understand that for most of you, like a large amount of your content may not be in SharePoint. It can be in terms of structured data. It can be in HR, CRM, SAP, custom databases. And you might want to use this data for creating new experiences in people search or customizing, personalizing your search experiences based off of the structured data that you already have. And then you may have unstructured data in terms of file shares, which you're using for kind of data mining sessions, extractions, any number of things. The idea is that we enable you to use your structured and unstructured data for complementing the out-of-box features in people search to be more personal and to be more customized to your user experiences. And so this is where our extensibility story comes into play. And for this, I'm going to hand it over to Mikhail right now, who's going to show you how easy and seamless it is to do this.
Right. Thank you, Sana. So Sana just showed you a scenario where the user profiles already have a lot of data in the different properties. But how do you actually get that data in there? So if you're like me, like populating the past projects fields is something I do every time the sales guy tells me, well, I need to you need to update your CV because I'm sending out a bid. So what projects have you worked in the past? So I really hate doing that. But that information actually lives somewhere else. And you have that with a lot of other properties. So maybe your skills property, you probably update like your LinkedIn profile much more frequently than you do the profile page in SharePoint. So what if you could take that data and synchronize it into SharePoint? And that's where BCS comes into play, because you have so on-premise, you have a function where you can set up a BCS connection and create an external content type. So I expect everyone here knows what an external content type in BCS is. And you can use that to actually synchronize data from other repositories into different properties in the user profile page. So in order to set the context here, so the notion is often you're looking for people, you're looking for subject matter experts, but you don't really know who they are. So who knows something about water purification in Africa? So here you actually have 2 points you can start searching on. So you have water purification, and you have the place Africa. So this could typically be someone filled in their ask me about field, water purification, or maybe someone authored a document with the word water purification. So actually been in a project where this was a good example, but the files, they were not in SharePoint. They were in a file server who hasn't been indexed, so they weren't able to find the right guy. Or maybe you're organizing the summer party, and you want some of your colleagues to do some of the entertainment. So you need someone to play the piano. So this is more like a soft skill. You might have entered into the interest field in the profile page, like that you like to play the piano, run a marathon, or maybe do some tap dancing. So maybe you don't want to put that in there because you don't want people to find out your hidden skills, right? But that's a possibility. Or someone told you well, you need to call up a customer we have. They have a problem, but you don't know who to call. So what's the contact person, or who in your organization knows something about this customer? So where do you go to find that contact information? That's typically not something you will find in the user profiles. Probably be something in the CRM system or some other directory which has this customer information. But you could very well then synchronize data from that repository over to a field in the user profiles with customers you worked on. And the last example, so say, okay, it's payday. You're checking your account, but it's the balance is 0. And you want to buy a new TV or something. So who do you call? So who's responsible for getting the money into your account? So this could be properties like the department. So someone in the accounting department might be responsible for this. It could be someone knows about bank transfers. So there's different areas. So who you're supposed to call in order to find out where the money is, right? So this brings us into something I like to call, and a lot of people probably know this, like master data. So what is master data? So master data, this is the definition of Wikipedia. It's a single source of basic business data used across multiple systems, applications, and/or processes. So what I'm trying to convey here is that you have all these attributes about you, but they live in all these different systems, as Sana already said. In HR systems, it could be SAP, some CRM system. You have all these attributes, and these attributes are then first-class citizens of information in those systems. And you want to trickle down the information into SharePoint or into the user profile so you can utilize this to actually find people. And often this data is actually replicated in a lot of systems already. So, but which source of information actually owns the data? Who has the most relevant data, the most fresh data? And this is where you want to take this into SharePoint. And then using BCS is a good way of getting it there, as long as you can get the API up and running. And if you're using BCS, so you can do like web services, custom code, but now you also can use OData using REST. So that's a new feature in SharePoint 2013, which I'll use for the demo coming up. So the user scenario I'm going to do is we have Pavel Bansky, and he's a new guy at Contoso. So typically, if you're a new guy at the company, you don't know all the people, so you don't know who to contact. If you work for 20 years in the company, you probably know everyone, so then the scenario is a bit different. But anyway, so he's heading up a new campaign in Las Vegas, and he's looking to find someone who can help him with this campaign the coming week. And in order to do this, so we'll use a time tracking application called DID, which I happen to know fairly well since I worked on it. So basically, this is an application which knows whether all the projects and customers you build hours on, and it synchronizes this data from your Outlook calendar. And since I have to do my hours every day, so this data is up to date, so it's prime data, so it's sort of master data for projects or customers I work with. So this is what we're going to use. And just to show you, so this is my calendar for this week. So you see I have 5 appointments, like full-day appointments for Monday through Friday. Well, this is something I put in my calendar several months ago. So you see there's says like PZL SPC. So PZL here is the customer, which is the company I work for, sort of like a loosely term for a customer. And then SPC is the code for SharePoint Conference. So if someone actually searched for SPC in People Search in our company, they would actually get me as a hit. And I probably know something about SharePoint Conference. And this is the same data coming in from the application. So if you notice here, so this is a SharePoint 2010 application. So I'm actually using a line of business application, which is SharePoint. So I'm going to import data from SharePoint into SharePoint using BCS. And you actually have to use BCS in order to do this into the user profile. So SharePoint 2010 could produce OData using REST, but it couldn't consume it in BCS. But now you have the availability to do that in SharePoint 2013. And just to set the architecture or the data flow, so you'll follow the demo afterward. So on the left-hand side, you have the time tracking application, which knows about your hours or the customers and projects. And this data is going through BCS, and then the projects themselves goes as first-class data into the search index. So you can search on projects and the description of projects in the search index. And then also data about what projects you have been working on goes into a property in the user profile. So there's 2 BCS connections set up going into SharePoint. And then when I'm doing the demo, I will also, when I show data coming, like project data, I will do live queries back using just REST and jQuery into the line of business application to bring in live data. So that's data not in SharePoint 2013. So it hasn't been indexed. It's just using an API against the application to bring more data in when I show it. So I'll switch over to the demo. Okay, so going back to the use case. So Paul is supposed to find someone who knows something about doing the project in Las Vegas. So he starts typing Las Vegas. And what he sees is a lot of documents here. There's a travel brochure, something about some hotels, so not really useful information about doing projects. And if you look at the authors, we have like System Account, Bullpen 4, Corrado, Rochi, so a lot of just weird names. So that's because these documents have actually been imported from the internet in my case. But it could very well be that someone imported these documents from a file share. Because what I'm looking for here actually, so the project I'll find in a minute actually happened in 2009. So it's old documents that's been migrated into SharePoint. So you don't always have the right authors. So this is the before scenario. So I scroll down here, so I'll have a lot of different documents. So I already indexed the projects, but I've created a query rule. Let's see, I'll just get that over here. So I have a query rule here, which actually blocks the project data. So now I'm going to disable that query rule. So everyone knows what a query rule is? No raise of hands? Okay, so briefly, that's something new in SharePoint 2013, where you can set triggers, so trigger words, or what happens when you execute a query, and then you can like direct the query to somewhere else. So when Sana showed you got documents when you search for a person, that was a query rule, picking up the name, executing another query, and bringing in the documents. So that's real powerful. So now if I go back to my results and I execute the same search again, so now I suddenly have a new hit there called Falcon. So this is a project Falcon coming from the time tracking application, shown with an icon here. And now if I hover over this project, I see, well, I get the project leader and I get the project member. So we have Alex Darrow, who worked 120 hours on this project, and Garth Fort has worked 170 hours on this project. And this is data coming live from the time tracking application. So that's pretty cool, right? So using jQuery or whatever API is available for your line of business system and just bringing that data live in the hover panel. And we also have a couple of links down here. So one is project site. That will take me back to the time track application, basically showing the same information, who's worked on it and the number of hours. But then I also have a link here called Learn More. So by clicking this, I will actually just re-execute or do another search on the project name Falcon. So if we look at the results here. So first I have a result block on top for the same project I just clicked on, and then I have the project members. So what happens here is when when the project data was synchronized into the user profiles into a separate property called did projects, because I'm not using the path projects property. And the reason for that is if you synchronize something into a property you can enter data in, you will overwrite the data coming in. So you need a separate property. And then those project names are going into a term store called projects. So I set up a query rule for the project name. So if the query matches one of the project names, I'm doing these two result blocks. So if you remember, so now I found some people who knows about doing projects in Las Vegas, but I also needed someone to know who was available next week. So if I start hover over Ali Baloo here, so now I get a calendar. I say, well, the calendar is fully booked for November, so she's probably not a good fit. And then I do the same for Garth. Well, his calendar is also booked. And then, of course, I do Alex Darrow. Well, next week he's available, so he's probably the guy I'm going to call first. And then if I do, like, move the calendar here, so now I get his availability for next week. So I happen to notice here, actually, well, he's not available, like, on Christmas Eve and Christmas Day, so that should probably be another color. But it shows how you can actually bring data from other applications in and give good value in people search. So this is also going queries against the line of business application. So basically just customizing the hover panel and doing the queries and picking it up. So that's the demo. So what do you think? Kind of cool? Right? So now you probably wonder, so how is this actually set up? So now I'm going to go through some of the steps to actually set up this, set up the demo. So in order to, so how many of you have used SharePoint Designer to create external content types? Right. So the bad thing is that even though you can do external content types against OData in SharePoint 2013, you can't do it in SharePoint Designer, because it was the Visual Studio team who actually implemented this. Mainly for doing apps. So starting Visual Studio 2012, so I have some projects here. So basically just created a SharePoint app project. So I'll just open the project I have. And here you have, in the right-hand pane, you have your external content types. So just showing you how to do this. So if you right-click and then you do add, so you now have an option down there, content types for external data sources. So basically what I've done, I've just pointed the connection to the list data service in SharePoint in order to get the data back. So if I click next, then I get all the different entities. And we have, here's the projects, and then we have the user projects down there. So basically like clicking those two entities because I want the projects as first-class items in the search index, and I want to use the project items in order to populate the property in the user profile. So I already done this, so I'm not really concerned about all the XML files there, but the important files are the ECT files. So that's the entity model. So this show on screen right now is the entity model for the projects. So I cleaned it up a little bit from what's generated out of the box, and I have also added a root finder method here at the bottom. So you have to do some XML manipulation, but it's not really that hard, but it's basically a configuration, but I guess doing XML manipulation is sort of more on the developer side than on, I guess, the IT pro side. So I created my two data models here, and then the next thing I have to do is get those into SharePoint. So if I go back up here, and I'll go in SharePoint Central Admin, right? And then I will go to the BCS service, which I have a hyperlink over here. So here's the same two models imported. So basically what I did, I just took those two files, clicked import, and I imported both of the models. So then for the project items themselves, so if I go back to Central Admin and go to the search service application, so I have some content sources over here. So here's the one for projects. And that's connecting to the business data connectivity services. And I've chosen the did projects OData connection. So the same model I'll just imported. So that's getting the project data in. And then going back to the user profiles. So under the synchronization tab, so everyone who set up synchronization of people getting data from Active Directory into the user profiles has been here. So if we go to the connection settings, so I have the AD connection set up, and then I also have one called projects. So if I edit the projects one, so here, so I picked the data model, which I imported into VCS, and then I've set up a connection here as a one-to-many connection because the data coming in has basically two records: is username and project, username project. So if you worked on 5 different projects, there would be 5 lines for each user. And then I also added a username filter to the model, which actually just picks up the username coming in the data, and then I map that to the account name of the user profile. So that means when you do a synchronization of user profiles from Active Directory, so for each user coming in, it will take the username and do a lookup against this other data source, pulling in the product data and stuffing it into a different property. So this is just setting up the connection. And then if I go, go back here. So then if I look at the different properties, I have a couple of properties here at the bottom. So one called did projects. If I click edit, and at the bottom, so here you see I've set up a property mapping for synchronization against an external content type model in VCS. So basically, if I want to do another one, so here I have my different connections, AD and projects. I do projects. And then my only option now is using the project keywords because I already mapped the project names. And then that basically sets up the mapping and get the data in there. Okay. So now we've set up the connection to get the projects in, set up the connection to actually get the projects into the user profiles. So the next step I've done is, so there's also a managed property. So when you do search, so every property you search in is called a managed property. It's basically taking whatever column you have in SharePoint or property in the user profiles in this case, and making it into a separate property which is used in search. So both the past projects property and the did projects property is then mapped to the same managed property in search. So that means when you look at the search results, the automatically synchronized projects will then appear in the past projects list in the search results. And then for the last part, tying it all together, so then I have some query rules. So if I do show my query rules again. So here's one rule for project hits and one for project members. So if you see here, so it's mapping in a dictionary called projects, which comes from the term store, and then it shows a promoter result block, and I've chosen to add it to the top. And same thing for project members. And if I want the project members to be above the project hits, then I could like rearrange here and move the order. So you can move that up and down. So the query will sort of run as a top-down. So the first one executes, and then it says continue over here, which lets, okay, it moves down to the next one. So if I did like stop here, then it wouldn't do the other rules afterwards. Right. So I'm just doing a recap of all these stages. So first, I connected to a time tracking application, which is a line of business application. And then I got the product names, and then I used BCS to get those into the user profiles. And also use projects and the calendar availability directly with the API in order to get that information over to SharePoint and finding the right person who is available next week. And then I create some query rules and some UI customizations in order to improve the people results. So the scenario itself is not really that hard. The hard part is finding these applications, finding the APIs, finding the use cases. What are you looking for? What are the different points you want to hook into when you actually want to find people? And that's where you're probably going to spend the most time. So when you have the business cases and the use cases for finding people, then it's easier to like find the technical, either the barriers or you just find the right APIs, and then you can connect it back up. So that's the first demo. So is this something you're going to do in your own organizations, or did you like get some ideas of some data you have which you want to pull into SharePoint? I see some nods. That's good. Right. And then moving over to my second demo. So as Sana said, we're talking about user context. So user context is all about who you are, what you do, what are your interests, what's useful for you in the organization. We want to tap into this to bring the right content to you. So what's the intent? So when you execute a query, what's the intention? What are you looking for? When you use internet search like Google or Bing, then you have the power of the masses. Because if you execute a query, then maybe like thousands of other people execute the same query, and they clicked on the results, and that brings up the right results for you. Enterprise search is usually not that easy, because you don't have like several thousands or millions of users prioritizing content for you. So it's all about putting you in the middle. So we're like centering on you. So up until now, we looked at finding people. Now we want to find the content. So the notion is that content closer to you is most likely more relevant. That means if I work in the developer department, content authored by my colleagues in the development department is more relevant for me than a PowerPoint presentation in the sales and marketing department. And then we want to take this and then prioritize content, which I need. And that cuts down the time spent finding it. So I don't have to do like page 2, page 3, etc. So we'll use Pavel again as a use case. So now he's looking for documents on product design as research for his new campaign. That's what he's going to do. So just to set the stage, so we're trying to find content closer to you, and we'll do this based on organization structure. That means which department is Pavel working in, based on who you follow, and based on sites you follow. So this is a new feature in SharePoint 2013 where you can follow people, you can follow sites, you can follow documents, and these are all listed in the user profile page. And I'm going to use that in order to prioritize content. So the theory is that I will probably follow people I know produce good content, because I'm not going to follow them like I do on Twitter or on Facebook, where you like follow anyone. So I'm going to follow people I know who create good stuff, because that's going to help me in my work. And same with sites. So there's some sites which probably have more authoritative content for you, or more relevant content for you. And I'm not going to follow all the sites. So for any of you who's doing social and put like a feature in like you were automatically like follow all your colleagues in the same department or anything, don't do it. Let the people follow the one they want to follow themselves. If not, you're going to break like the social thing. So let people follow who they think is the most important. So it's basically turning business rules into query rules once again. So what's the use case? What's the user scenario? How are you actually gonna do this on your content, right? So let's get back into the demo. So switch. Okay. So he was looking for products design. So he searches for products design. Okay. So if we look at the results here, so I get some literary design proposal, I have some marketing overviews, like a bunch of different documents. And if you look at the left-hand side here, I have a department refiner. So this is not out of the box. I wish it would have been, but it's not. So it's basically content enrichment. So what I've done, I've created a simple module, I'll show it afterwards, which during indexing takes each item, takes the author of the document, executes a lookup against Active Directory, pulls in the department you work with, and stuff that has a property on the document. Same as you have departments on users. So now you suddenly have a refiner for department as well on documents. So now if I click sales and marketing, I refine the result, and these are like probably more relevant. So if I, let's see. So if I look down on the results, so I see a presentation here called Marketing and Sales 101. So that's probably good research. I'm new at the company. I need to find, get into how do we do marketing and sales at Contoso. So I see I have a couple of contributors here on the documents. I have Paul Bansky, which is myself, and then Garth Fort. So Garth Fort, he popped up in the other demo I did. So he had worked on the Las Vegas project. So he's probably a good guy to follow. So he produces good content. So now if I execute a search for Garth, what I'm going to do now, so I'm just going to click follow. So now I'm following Garth. And then if I go back to my search page, and I will search for products design once again. And if we look at the documents, so now most of the documents here on top has Garth as an author. So now, so what I've done is I've taken Garth. He's one of the guys I follow, and I use that to actually promote content. So if Garth is an author on content, that content will trickle up further up in the result sets. So I continue looking here and I say, well, so now the marketing and sales document is a bit further up, and it comes from a site with templates. So think, well, maybe the template site, that's a pretty good site. It has a lot of documents which I need in order to get into stuff and learn how we work with sales and marketing. So if I click the view library, I'll just open that in a new tab. We'll wait for the page to load. And then up in the right corner, I'm going to click follow once again. So now I'm following the template site. So going back. So if I just re-execute the search from this page, nothing will actually happen. So I have to reload it. And the reason is, so if you see at the top here, you might have noticed already, it says like really simple hidden social enabler web part. So this is a web part which, when you go into the page, actually picks up who do you follow and what sites you follow and put that into a variable, which I can use in my query rules. So this is not something you can do in SharePoint Online right now. So this is a regular web part and a feature activated on the search site. So I'll open my page once again. Search for products design. And now, see the top two documents here. They're from the template site. This is not really that hard. Well, okay. Is it cool? Yeah. Right. So I'll just do a quick warning first. So when you start doing this, it's all about relevancy. So all documents have a certain relevancy when it comes up on the page. And when you start tuning the relevancy, so when I start tuning, following people, that will boost something. And then I start boosting on the sites. Or maybe I could also have done boost on the department. And this will all interfere with each other, and maybe all give some points of boost. And this is, so you should keep it as simple as possible. And yeah, I'll just leave it at that, because it takes time. But I'll show the query as well afterwards, how this works. All right. So I will once again go into Visual Studio. So let's close this one up. So I'll open, let's see, I have my recent projects. So first, I'll just show the code for the content enrichment. So the content enrichment part, which will be a session on later today, is actually, so you implement an interface here called iContent Processing Enrichment Service. It's basically a web service or a WCF service which you create. And then by implementing this interface, you have a method here called process item. So this gets, so whenever you index, the item being indexed comes into this pipeline. And you register your service with a PowerShell script, and then you say, which properties do you want to come into your service? So I registered this with the PowerShell script, and I said, well, I want the author property. That's what I want. So I'm getting the author in, and I'm writing a department out. So basically what happens here is, so I get the properties, and then I do, well, give me the author property. And then I do some checking, and then for the case of this demo, I'm just picking up the first author, because the document can perfectly well have 2 or 3 authors. But I've just taken the first one for this here. And then I do some locking here, so just because I'm creating cache, and then I have a method here called getDepartmentFromAuthor. So basically what it does, it takes the author, does a query against Active Directory, pulls back the department, and then down here, I create a new property called department property with the name department, adds that to the same item coming in, and then that's returned. So basically, so I'm getting the author in, returning the department out. I mean, you can do anything here. So it's basically your whatever business rule or use case you have, you want to do here. So how many of you worked with the pipeline extensibility and fast search for SharePoint? So some of you. So the good thing here, compared to the fast search for SharePoint, is that you can set some trigger rules. So every item doesn't have to go into your service. So you can set some rules saying, okay, if it's from a particular content type or content source, then you're going to run this. And that has something to do with, like, if you're indexing millions of items, then you don't want to like process everything. It takes time. So you want to cut down specifically on the first crawl. So I guess they'll probably talk more about that as well in the later session on content enrichment. So that's the department refiner. And then adding into the UI is merely editing the page, editing the refiner web part, and then checking off department, because department's already a refiner because it's used on people. So it's already there. And then for the web part, let's see. Then that's the search extension. So it's basically quite a simple web part. So I have here a method called before serialization to client. So that means this happens before data is sent into the page, being picked up by the JavaScript, which actually executes a query. So I'm getting the current user. I'm getting the service context, and I'm getting the user profile manager, and then I'm checking, well, does the user already have a profile? If it has a profile, I'm pulling out the profile here, and then I'm using the SP Social Following Manager, which is a new class, which I can then use to get the followers. So first, I get the followers of the users, get followed, so I have a enum here called users on the SP Social Actors types. Then I'm adding that to authors I follow. And then I do the same thing for sites. So I could also have done documents. But if you start following documents, a lot of documents, and you expand that into the query runtime, that will be a huge query going out. So that might have a performance impact. So you probably don't want to do that on the documents. But I think like user and sites, a pretty good scenario. And then what happens here is I put this into a property bag. So I call my variables followed users and followed sites. So these two names then I can then use when creating query rules. So now I'm going to show you the query rules for this. So minimizing Visual Studio, and if I go back to my query rules, so I have here some rules, the social follower boost. So if I click edit on this one, let's see, and you have on actions, you have like change ranked results by changing the query. Just remove this part. So if you look at this query, can everyone read the screen? It's not too small. So first we have the search terms. So in my case, this was product design, so that's the keywords coming in. And then I'm doing an X rank on followed users. So there's a special notation here with a pipe sign before, because that if you follow like more than one, this will expand into like author X or author Y or author C. And then I'm adding another X rank on the side, so sort of like a nested X rank query. You can also set this up by, if you go to the sorting tab, and if you click set sorting here, and add dynamic ordering rule, and if you do like a custom one, manual condition, so then I could do the same thing here. So if I do like author, yeah, and then the same colon, and then the same variables going in here. So out of the box, you can do like any property on the user profiles is already present. So that you can use do in SPO. But since I created my own variable, you have to do it on premise. So but basically, So you just set some connection, or some condition, and then using the XRank search keyword coming from fast now in KQL. So if you looked at the values I used, so if I can just go back to the basics. So this says like CB equals 1 and then STDB equals 1. So so CB equals 1, that's a constant boost. That means if it matches, it will get 1 point more. And then the STDB boost is a standard variation, which will map into the formula. So if you go on Techno, there's like this huge formula with A, B, C, D, and E. I think there's like 5 different variables which you can tune, and putting that into the formula. So you basically have to like play around with the numbers. So if you work with XRank with fast search for SharePoint, you had pretty high numbers, but now it's all normalized. So I think on the page you just saw, I think the high rank would be like 11 or 16 point a lot of decimals. So you really have to play around with this. Hopefully there will be some guidance coming out from Microsoft on how to actually play with these different numbers and like what's some good numbers to use. But if on the sorting pane here, if I click like I want to promote to top, then I know it adds a constant boost of 5,000. That's quite a lot, like when the highest number was like between 15 or 20, then adding 5,000 will ensure it gets to the top. So, how are we on time? Yeah. So that concludes the setup and the code and the query rules. Yeah. So, if you click, yeah. Yeah. So just to recap the last demo. So first, I used the content enrichment web service in order to get the department refiner. So not a lot of code. So most of the code in that module was basically making sure it doesn't break anywhere. So, but just the lookups is not that much code at all. And then I created a fairly simple web part, just using the APIs in SharePoint, pulling in who do you follow and what size do you follow, and add that as variables, which I can then use in the query rules. So basically, I took the business rule, which I talked about at the beginning, saying, well, content created by people close to me is more relevant, and I want those prioritized to the top. Right. Okay.
So you guys just saw a lot, and you just heard a lot. So I'm going to keep the closing note really simple. The first thing is that people search, all of the features that we've created for you out of the box, are meant to make your users more productive. We think and we hope that for most of you, or for the majority of you guys, the out-of-box feature set is going to be sufficient for your user scenarios, and they will delight your users when they're using these experiences. The second thing is that for those of you who live vicariously and want to go in and customize and personalize, we've tried to make it super easy and create these endpoints that Mikhail just showed you. And so the first demo that Mikhail showed, they were just easy configurations that you guys can make to like kind of build on top of the out-of-box experience. And so the last message that I want to share with you over here is that people search is super powerful. Use it out of the box and customize on top of it so that we can, if you have limitations, we get to learn about those things. And in the next releases, we will work to make it even better. So that's it. And these are some of the sessions that you guys should attend if you want to learn about the search content enrichment and extensibility. That's at 5 p.m. today in the same room. We have a few other search sessions, making great search-based applications with query rules. This is the one where I saw a few of you raise your hands when we asked who's heard about query rules. It's a super, super powerful feature that we're introducing in SharePoint 2013. Go to this session. You will definitely learn a lot.
Yeah, and the good thing about query rules and results blocks is that it actually takes down the barrier for doing a lot of custom code. I think if I were to create the same solution in SharePoint 2010, I would have shown you a lot more code than I did right now. So I didn't show you the HTML templates, but it's HTML and a few lines of JavaScript in order to do those queries. But it would have been a lot more going into it.
Oh, OK. Yeah, you just heard that. 231 is over here.
Yep.
And then we have a few other sessions. Yeah, the time is wrong on 231.
Right.
Search development in SharePoint 2013. And then you have optimized search relevance for those of you who are looking for custom relevance and ranking in your search experiences. Attend this session. We have our relevance guru in-house to help you guys out. So that's it from our side. Do you guys have any questions? Yes, please. So the question is that if I have users who are in Active Directory, but they don't have my sites, will I? No. Right.
But you can still, get data from synchronized data from other sources than Active Directory as well.
Right. Yeah. So out of the box, no, but you can sync that data that Mikhail just mentioned into your profile store, and it will work. Yeah. Any other questions? On the previous ones? Okay. Yeah. So the question is, do we do a two-way sync for the other sources that we have?
You're talking about the user profile, the properties. So if you look at, when I set up the connection, they said like one way. So depending on the external content type you set up, so if it's a two-way external content type, you can also synchronize the other way. Yeah. Basically because I had already had the code for it. So yeah, I could very well have done lookups against the, because the data is already coming from Active Directory into the department field in the user profile. So yeah, I could have used but the main reason actually is since this is running on, so the web service, content enrichment web service can run anywhere. So it doesn't necessarily have SharePoint on it. And it's easy, and the APIs are there directly in .NET to do Active Directory queries. So then I didn't have to reference the SharePoint DLLs or the client model.
My question's related to the actual user interface of the search control. Obviously, in earlier versions, there used to be the drop down to search for first name, last name, department, etc. And generally, I find nearly every implementation I do I create a people search functionality, and there might be a drop down or a search for department. Yeah, it seems to be that you're really pushing to do a keyword and then use the refiner, whereas I still find that a lot of people like to just say, show me everyone in this department. So they always like to have a drop down. Is there any sort of recommendations, or we just still start creating our own web parts to do that?
You probably have to do your own. So the UI is what it looks like, but using the HTML templates, it's a lot easier to create customizations now.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
But there's no built-in drop-down for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But obviously, if you want to create your own web part, you want to try and leverage some of that type ahead type functionality.
Right.
Yeah.
Is that just included in some
so you
jQuery libraries or something?
Yeah. If you create your own web parts, you can still inherit the different web parts. So they're still there. But the difficult part is, since a lot of the new web parts actually use a lot of jQuery or JavaScript. Yeah. So it might be a bit more difficult to hook into the different parts going back, since there's AJAX queries going back and forth. You don't have a post back, which is easier. Yep. Program, but you can still do your own web parts and still get into the logic and modify stuff. And
yeah. Any other questions? I think that's about right. Yes. So the question is that the smart matching that we're showing, can we do that on custom properties other than the out-of-box ones? And the answer is absolutely yes. That's exactly what Mikhail did in his demo, where he brought in custom properties and then created query rules for matching on the values in that property. Yeah. So you can do it for, you have job title, department, a bunch of these properties. They may be out of the box or not. You can create custom query rules that will let you do that.
Could you briefly summarize what is not available in
what we did right now? So, like getting the followers, that's not possible because you have to do custom code. Like getting the sites you follow and the people you follow. Yeah. So you can't do that because that's why I had that that small web part. So you can do that. The first demo, so I don't know about this, but you already have you can already set up BCS connections in the cloud, but you can't use those to map into the user profiles right now. So hopefully Microsoft will enable that in the future. So if we're lucky, not too long, so you could do the first demo, like just getting those external data in there. You could do that. But I guess you could, since you already have the APIs to actually work with your user profiles, and you can do that like from on-premise towards the cloud. So you could create your own module to put the properties into the user profiles, but you can't do the synchronization the way I did. So you have to do a bit more work to get it in there. So it's possible. But I guess as the cycles, like each quarter, they will give more and more features. Yeah. So I guess when things stabilize and there's a demand for different features, more feature will trickle into the cloud version.
Into SPO, yeah. Yes, that is right. Do we have any other questions, or is it a wrap?
For the search results page, is there any way to render the actual relevance results? How do you do that?
Yes. So I'll show that real quick.
I've moved to it.
So if I so I have one called debug search. So now if you see at the top of each result here, it says like rank 18.8, and then you have the different scores. So basically what I did, I just took the default template, and I added a field with the property rank. And then for this search center, I said, well, each result should use this result template. So even if it's a Word document or PowerPoint document, I don't care about like the display template you usually use. I just say like each result should use my template just to show the relevancy. So when I actually created this demo, I had this site running side by side, and I did my queries to see what kind of relevance it got, and then doing the ranking I did afterwards. Yeah. So.
Can you see which site was followed, or?
So which site was followed in terms of that?
No.
You don't see it in the tool that we have.
Yeah. And we have another slide coming up with some resources, and I think like 3 days ago, someone at Fast actually released a tool, a REST-based tool, where you see the final query coming in and you get the rank score, but you don't actually see like the full model, which point actually gave what amount of rank. So hopefully, I don't know if there anyone here from Microsoft who knows if they have some internal tool showing how the exact relevance model is built up.
You should attend the 5 p.m. session tomorrow that we have on relevance, and that would be the expert session for you to get an answer for that
Because
question.
I created a tool for Fast Search for SharePoint which actually shows that, like which rule or whatever gives what score to the final score. Yeah. And I'd very much like to have that for 2013 as well. Well, you probably don't want to show the relevancy score to the end users. No.
No, for testing.
Yeah. But you could probably pull that in because that information is already stored on the profile page. So you can see like all the users and all the sites you follow. And it would be fairly easy to...
So to see the breakdown across the different sites that you're following and what's contributing to the final score.
But you could do that with simple jQuery. So in the hover panel, so if you have a search result, you know the URL, and then you just execute a query over to the user profile, say, okay, what sites do you follow? And then you do another query finding out what's the query rules on this page, and you find a match, and then you can say, well, this was used. So you can sort of get to it. Yeah. Yeah. With some work.
Okay. So cool.
Okay.
I think we have a wrap here. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for attending.
Yeah.
Thanks.